Ooh, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Here I am under my electric blankie. This is what saved my life over Christmas when it got to be 18 degrees in the man cave. As long as electricity doesn't go out, I won't be a popsicle. And I want to thank everyone who has donated or gifted me um, a little something in my PayPal between Thanksgiving and now. All three of you. It's very generous of you. I know it's tough for you because the folks who gifted me really, they're not like like the unmentionable one. His mommy and daddy gift him like 5, 6 grand a month. But I can live like a millionaire on $400. And it's interesting. People are so desperate to get out of their icky world, and they're running like cockroaches out into the deep green and turning that into the icky world. And the deep green, I've been very blessed to be there for the last 20 years. This year, 2023 is 20 years. Now, I didn't live there, you know, 24/7, 365. The first, 17 years or so, I lived there. The first 6 years, I just had the property and I stuck my hippie wagon on it, and I would just camp out in that. And then when I started to get a pretty good cash flow with my moving into the corporate world, I nibbled at the property and turned it into the best site there. Right, I have about 4 acres plus, and it's the flattest. And nobody wanted it because it was the bog. And I drained it out and turned it into a garden paradise. It really is. And you know, Colonel Sanders came from Florida, right away from his whatever, and he went to the end of the cul-de-sac, and he bought the tippy edge of the dumpster, and then he, kind of like Russia, went in and annexed other people's property because they weren't there. They just put up gates and fences, but um, more cockroaches from California and Texas and New Jersey and Charlotte and all over. The folks who think they're rich, but really not. No one's rich. Even the Charles Schwabs of Davos aren't rich. I mean, I saw what's his name, moron boy, Senator Ketchup, who then became Secretary of State and tried to run for president, and is a skull and bones boy along with George W. And you should go Google mystery schools, right? know, People like Madame Blavatsky and George W.'s mom. Her biological father was oh, the guy so above, so below, and so there are a lot of mystery schools, dark ones, light ones, the Masons, the Illuminati, but they're those are just posters of theological society. Guys like Gurdjieff, Ouspensky, Steiner. um, Edgar Casey, um, just to name a few. If you really want to get a good um, YouTube on this, go to Dark Journalist and go to his X Series 144. That was done last Friday, I think. It's, about 2 hours long, but it gives you the best overall view, and it shows from our founding fathers who were all Masons. Look at the frigging, you know, seal of the United States. The pyramid with the eye of horse over it, right? Pluribus human. You know, out of many is one. you know, so it's um, it's an interesting time we live in, and they're pushing everyone. If you go watch, Steven Spielberg was you know anointed uh, the purveyor of what's going on in the near future. He's the guy. It's a term for it where they with the power structure, the hidden. I call it the hidden hand. It's the all. The hidden hand is a nice term because it covers everything, not just one little element. But most folks are so addicted to convenience that they can't see outside their prejudice. Um, and it's really interesting. The metaverse and the Matrix were basically theorized, by the Nazis during World War II. And when Turing, um, basically, he should go read. He has two really good books. One's called The Golem, which is basically, the metaphor for turning humanity into a transhuman. You know, when they put the URL code on your back of your neck, that's that holds enough. Not the bars, but the little squarey thing. Um, that's got enough info there to hold all your DNA. They can like re-incumbent you. It's like we're somewhere between the Federation and Blade Runner, right? And if you really look at the Federation, that's a fascist entity, a little kind of nicer. Um, and but and the war in Ukraine, I mean, what? There is no real reason for it. The excuse Russia gives is, their existential fear of NATO being on their border. But that's like forget about it. I mean, all of the Baltic states joined. Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, Hungary. They all joined. Um, Not only the EU but NATO, right? So they're all on. Finland is on the Russian. The real deal is Crimea. That's and they couldn't. Even though they took that property through many excuses, um, their little bridge didn't service the 2 million people who live there, right? And Ukraine had control of the water that grew all of Crimea's food, and they turned that tap off. So now Russia has to pay the nickel to subsidize all of, you know, Crimea just so they can have a naval base on the Black Sea, which is, you know, it has this little waterway that Turkey controls in and out, right? So it's um, very, very, very strange times we live in, and they just, the Union of Concerned Scientists has upped the clock to 90 seconds towards doomsday. It's the closest to doomsday we ever been. And so, and we have, global warming and climate change pandemics and inflation, and these are all entities. These are all characteristics of a theater of a soap opera, right? And Putin has survived the last 20 years. I mean, people have been trying to knock him off since he got there, right? So, and Russia is so incompetent and corrupt that you know you look at Russia and their leadership was always getting knocked off, right? So, and Russia was created by you know the Rothschild entity when Mr. Rothschild, in the 1800s, went in to Germany and pulled Marx and Engels out of German prisons and brought them to London and housed them in a really nice, fine house in the city of London, where they wrote Das Kapital and created the loyal opposition. And that's what Russia, the Soviet Union, let's not Russia so much, but the Soviet Union. And World War One was there to crush the Tsar and collapse the Russian Empire and, put in the loyal opposition of the socialists, the Bolsheviks, right? And, you know, the other side of that coin is the Karazian mob that, was is like ISIS. It floated around um, the Silk Road during, you know, the Catholic Church's, the Holy Roman Empire, I should say, the Holy Roman Empire's empire building, and the Crusades, right? And so they just hung along the side of the road and picked up the crumbs from the Crusades, right? And most of that was bling, right? And they would kind of, move up and down, and they were the they had a caliphate. They called it that, right? And they would grab some land, and the poor peasants who were there were their slaves, and they just sat on the side of the road and wait towards someone vulnerable with a lot of bling would come by, and they would rob and rape and pillage and kill, right? And they would kind of go up and down in that Eastern Caucasus region, and until Russia, the Tsar, one day said, "I had enough of this," and he went over and put his boot on their neck and said, "Okay, boys, stop it. You know, we don't, we're criminals too, but you're cutting into our Vic, so you need to move on." And you have to stop being land pirates, No, you need to become either Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. We don't care. And then move into Western Europe. Get out of our neighborhood. That's what they did, right? And they were not, they chose to be, they called themselves Jews because all they had was bling, a lot of jewelry. So their business plan was, instead of trying to hold territory, was to move into Western Europe, where all these, France, Germany, Habsburgs, England, Spain, Portugal, were all kind of, vying to be who was going to be the Danes, the Norwegians, you name it. Everyone was kind of fighting each other in these little wars that just kind of weakened them. And each one of these municipalities or principalities needed, you know, capital to arm up, right? And so that's what these guys did. And they, they weren't one of the Hebrew tribes, they were Ananashki. That's what they call themselves, Ananashki Jews. And they picked up the term Jew because they had jewelry, right? And they weren't allowed to be lawyers, doctors. Well, they could be doctors, but they couldn't own anything. They couldn't be part of the government. They couldn't have any access, but they could, be bankers and doctors. and somewhat of a lawyer, but not in the, they could be in the criminal law and the business law, but not in the law of writing laws, not in government, right? And so, um, and that's how we got the Zionists, right? Guys like Meyer Kahane, right? He's a good example of this, and he's long gone, but his ghost is deeply embedded in Israel, and that's why the Israel that was envisioned really isn't the Israel of today. It's more like a corporate scene, right? So all of this, here we are, 15 minutes and 55 seconds into the show. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. And I'm here to invite you as your griot to tell you a story. So sit back, get your morning coffee or afternoon cocktail, and we're going to go into what the old crone. So there are all these mystery schools, and as I said, if you go to Dark Journalist, and and he had a really good show last Friday, and go to his X series X144, right? And but he's like me; he's been doing it about a year longer than I've been doing this, and he was a real journalist, and he was a real scholastic scholar, and he has some real connections. Me, I'm just a lucky bastard, right? All of my connections have been fortuitous. Um, and that I would just stumble in, the fact that I died at birth, and there was this uh, woman doctor who basically invented critical care for infants, and she was there and she pushed the men out of the room. And well, let's see, first time I've heard, trying to see in here on, let's see, uh, your Al Bob. Yep, Sensei Al Bob, that's me. More art shows. Very good. Yep. Fantastic artist. Yep, he is. And all my art friends are of the quality of Eric. I mean, that's me. I'm that. But I did not see my great talent or great curse, however you want to look at it, is that I'm a polyglot, meaning I learned early how to conscious intent I am, and consciously intent I use in everything I do. Right? I don't try to do something. I don't. You know. I do my best. Now, I'm not perfect. When I was a youngster, I was this interesting little peanut, and I was, and I still am totally naive. I trust everyone, but I'm like Ronald Reagan. I verify. So a good portion of the population is being swung into this materialistic motif, right? And the four illusions of the hidden hand are first science, right? I only believe in what's true in reality. What is reality? And once they stick the VR glasses on everyone, there is no reality. I mean, we're already in that state, because we are surrounded by materialism. When Newton basically stated that, okay, hey, look, God is here, and that's in the spirit world, right? Well, we can't see God, we don't know God, we can kind of feel him. He's deep inside us, but that's in the spirit world. The material world is God's machine. He set this up and got it running, and that works pretty good if you look at on the macro, the big picture, right? But once you start getting deeper and deeper and deeper into it, you see that God isn't somewhere invisible over there. It's in us. We are that spirit. And that's what art is. He should tell me his. And the essence of real artists is that they do their work, right? So this, this little YouTube is my art form because my other art forms, my photography, I did it, done it, right? My performance art did it, done it. My theatrical career did it, done it, right? As a lighting designer, did it, done it. I mean, I still do all of those things, but not pursuing them, right? And so, what I am is my present art form is to serve love's co-creation, right? To be that pebble in the world wide web, to be that cheeky monkey, right? And I'm getting pretty old. I'm in my 70s, and the other illusion is we are not our DNA. Our DNA is basically a URL code, right? It's just defining your little bag of water. And if you let your little bag of water be your prison cell of your spirit, you're toast. You're going to be, with that spike in your back of your head like Neo in a bathtub. And the unmentionable one, he did a I don't know, he does these YouTubes that I think are great. I see the unmentionable one as the 21st century of the autistic Jerry Lewis, And you know how the French thought Jerry Lewis was a great artist? That's how I view John. And so when he was in the bathtub in his little undies and he was rolling around in that bathtub, it was straight out of the Matrix. That boy is like he is totally toast, right? Because he's got great talent, you know. He's got a great CV, curriculum vitae. He's got all kinds of degrees, but he doesn't do anything but for himself. He's got two children, and he goes on and on about um, his ex after she had been divorced from the unmentionable one for at least a good 4 or 5 years. Yeah, she got horny and she got knocked up by a tow truck driver, right? He couldn't care less. He just wanted to get his wick wet, right? And so she got knocked up, and she had a little girl, and the unmentionable one just keeps going on about that's his little girl. He has to protect those children. Well, he hasn't in the last 10 years. Last time he saw his kids, they were 7. Now they're teenagers. His oldest is probably 17. You know, and when a kid doesn't have a father, right? And he has a mother who is like, and that's why I've been, I do not give up on a friend, right? And so the unmentionable one is, his insides, his spirit is a really good one, as is all of ours, because we're all our relations. We're all one. When Moses met up with the burning bush up on that mountain, when Moses thought he was Egyptian, the Pharaoh loved him more than his son, kept him in charge of the empire. And then it got out that Moses was Hebrew, and the Hebrews hated him, so he had no support, so he had to get out of town. So he went all the way to the other side, you know, from Egypt, like up to Turkey, up into the Ararat Mountains, and found this interesting scholarly guy who he kind of was a rabbi, but he was more than a rabbi. And he had 3 beautiful daughters and a nice wife, and he Moses, sparked with one of the girls, and that took her as a wife, and she took him as husband. They, lived with dad and mom and the girls and the goats and the sheep. And Moses was very happy for that life, just to be a sheep herder, right? And he was up in the hills with the sheep and the goats. And one day he's looking at the stars, and all of a sudden, shooting star, bam, hits a tree, burning bush, right? And the burning bush starts talking to Moses. I am Moses. Hey, wake up. Oh, who are you? I am Moses. I want you to go to Egypt and free the Hebrew nation, our people. Why should I? I like it here. I don't need to do anything. I'm looking at the stars. That's good enough for me. Want a good conversation? I got dad. And my sweetie, she's hot tamale and she's a smart girl. Right? She takes care of me. I mean, that's what Neil Young sang, when he was searching for golden something, heart of gold. I'm looking for a maid. That's why Neil was. It still is kind of. I mean, they had a couple good songs, like "Our House." That was a great song. I like that. Right? And "Wooden Ships." That was a good song. And so everyone has their moment that they can, connect with the higher power and turn out something pretty good. Now, my thing is to be in service to love's co-creation. I've been it since I was born, but I had all these, electricity is my major connectivity to the larger universe, right? Because everything's electric. That spirit energy is electric, right? It's as the mystery schools call it ether, right? And all the, all, Newton, all, Da Vinci, all of those guys, all the greats, were part of a mystery school. Why do you think got them so smart? Me, so was I. But I was around these mystery schools because I grew up in New York City, and they were all around. Weiser's bookstore was just down the street from me. CFR, and they had their own version of the mystery school. They had Billy Kluver. UN had a ton of mystery schools in it. They're called NGOs. Um, and, Theosophical Society was there. Up there near Columbia, there were 3 theology schools. And what is theology? There's religion and theology. You go to a university, most in the old days when I was young, they didn't have a school of religion. They had theology, right? You studied theology, right? You got a degree in theology, and then you became a minister, right? You then went into whatever flavor of religion, and you then studied their workbooks, and you became a minister. Uh, let's see, art. Uh, it's why call him the unmentionable one? Well, go look at that video of him in a bathtub. Old man Neil. Yep. And the other thing about unmentionable one is it's a character trait, not so much a name, right? And when John is the sweet, real self, he's John. But he has all these, back in the DSR, that book that tells what crazy is. They have this thing called multiple personalities, and then there's, a psychic break, and usually you have to be one of many. It's hard to be lots of them. And when you're representing lots of sociological parameters, you're usually play acting. You know, I went to theater school. I learned how to be a character. And I can do that, and I do it very well. And when I was in Shrinky Land, being a shrink, I played the character of being a shrink. You know, and I was very good at that. Right? When I was in the corporate world and was a negotiator and a demographer and a soothsayer, I played that role well. So much so that they paid me a lot of money. Um, but each has its own cost. Is a good example, right? So, um, my 10-year stint in the corporate world, I gained 240 pounds and died, right? And destroyed a good all the organs in this bag of water here, this avatar. Now, my spirit is strong enough to like, okay, I died, went up to my life review. All my master was there, all my teachers were there. They were all patting me on the back, telling me what a great job. When I knew him, he was just a dirtbag kid running around the streets of New York, and look at him now. That potentially had really is paid off. I mean, he's so good. He does not restrict himself to the hidden hand. He's not, you know, controlled by the delusion of the illusion of materialism, right? He's not, look, his body, he just died, and that body is still kind of going by his spirit, willpower. It's kind of what the materialists call it, meaning willpower is the dynamic of your ego focused through the illusion of your body, right? So, but my is more my prayer, my our Father who art in heaven, and our Father is the prana life force, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, and the name is the word, right? What we speak. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom. We're in it right now. Thy kingdom will be done, meaning it's here right now. It's done. We're not going to die and go to heaven like it's some kind of gated community, like the unmentionable. I mean, and so the other reason I call John the unmentionable one, because when he gets in God and Jesus, God praise God, and that's a transactional thing. I say it enough, I'm going to go to heaven. And everybody else going to be in the lake of fire and the hell brimstone. And he goes on and on and on about it. He hasn't even read the friggin' Bible. He doesn't want to touch the Old Testament. And that's like, hey, you want to know what God is? Go look at the Old Testament. New Testament is Jesus, right? And the interesting thing, if you really read the Old Testament, you realize that God and Jesus, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, that's us. They call it, in the medieval, they called it the Holy Ghost, because people could kind of see the ghosts, they could kind of see, like when that nun crushed the orb in the eye, it turned my eye. I can see other frequencies. And, like no one knew infrared existed. Well, most of the insect world sees in the infrared, as you know, we live, all our senses are extraordinarily limited, you know. Um, and that's kind of why you can realize that our bodies were manufactured not by God, by the guys who are bringing us the hidden hand. They have been here for as long as we have, as in this model. We are their little high school science fair project, and boo-boo-boo-boo. Uh, potato. Salad. Even I gotta get new glasses. Even and I thank everyone for capitalizing everything because I can it makes me barely be able to read it. Both machine Canadians. Hmm. What call? Okay. Old man. Yep. Let's see. Do, 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 do. Ah, let's see. Salahua, huh? Tones. Fast times I've hooded crash out of the scene here on an earlier Sensei Bob time, I believe. With fish, yeah. Oh, see how long we 36 minutes. Yeah, 4 minutes. Oh, four of you. Come on, guys. How about some thumbs up? All right. How about somebody putting some in the old PayPal? I could sure use it. I'm on the bop. When I'm out there in the deep green, so that's why I was never in the deep green in the summertime. I mean, wintertime. It's like hard to be there, but it doesn't cost any money. My electric bill a little bit. But as long as I can keep it under $40, I can. That's in my budget. When it goes above 50 towards 60, I can still pay it, but it gets difficult. But if I were there in a deep winter, it'd be tough. Ooh, is the sun coming on? It looks like it is. It was dark and rainy um, today, and anyway, so and this show is called Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Bob, and on the Unmentionables channel, um, his most watched videos are about the 10 to 15 or 20 shows I did there, stories I told them, especially the old crone, the first one, right? That's got hundreds of thousands of views. And what's really, and this is why he's the unmentionable one. He does not put a link on any of my shows. And I said, John, if the first one went really crazy, and then he got a Russian wife, girlfriend, and she came over and he picked her up at the airport in Virginia near DC. I think she did go into Reagan. And, you know, she hadn't eaten anything on the airplane. She hadn't eaten like 48 hours. And then, he picks her up, gets in a car, and drives her back to the school. It's about, I don't know, 120 miles, like a 2 or 3 hour ride. And he wouldn't stop, not even for a cheeseburger, right? Anyway, I made an amazing meal, chicken and vegetables and baked bread and pies and cakes and champagne and wines and cheeses and a real feast. And I made a nice table with a tablecloth and plates and silverware and cloth napkins. And when I came in, I made them like and I had a fire roaring, and so it was cold, but when she came in, it was warm in there, and the roaring fire was beautiful, and I took her downstairs to where the big fireplace was, and it was amazing, and I just kept bringing food, and she ate it all, and John was right, and then you know she was like, "Oh wow," she's smoking some cigarettes and go, "Yeah, now I feel great." Uh, You know, who are you? And we had a nice little conversation. I told her stories, and she kind of giggled and laughed, and John was just a little, right? And so it got time for them to go, and I had a bottle of champagne and some chocolates on a silver platter, right? I said, "Here, take these up and enjoy." And they went upstairs, and around 5 in the morning, John came down with a hammer and he said, "Get out! Get out! Get out! She's got hair on her pussy. She's got hair on her underarms. She smells. Ah!" Well, get out! And he chased me out, and it took me about an hour, and the whole time, get out, get out, get out, right? And that was like the first time he really threw me out. And it was wintertime. It's like January. Everything was iced and snowy, and she was out there. She had her Russian mink. She had this amazing mink coat that had a hood, and he stole it from her, right? Because he kicked her out too, not to, but all she wanted was to get out of Russia and get to America. And I never saw her again. But she was out there naked with her mink coat on, and she had like 3 cigarettes. And I don't know, what am I doing here? I gotta get out of here. That guy's not. I tried to please him, but what we can talk about is how my armpits smell. Anyway, and so that's why I call John the unmentionable one, because he constantly does stuff like that, right? And as a social scientist, the unmentionable one, and again, that's why I call him, because he represents so many psychoses and neuroses, that he is either, they grabbed him and put him to a lab, and he's got your code already in his brain, and who knows, maybe that's it. But you know, I'm the only person who seemingly cares about him. But it's like, I don't know if you've ever been in a research laboratory where they have animals, and the scientists get very attached to those things they're studying, and not just in a research laboratory. Anybody who um, looks at things in an ology way, let's put it that way. There's theology, which was the study of God, basically, right? But that's why they call it theology, because the guys who were in that discipline realized, that's where, when I was a theologian, I realized the word God back in Sumerian means snake oil salesman. Theology is the study of the life force of what makes our existence more than just a biological entity. If we were, the little gray guys that people see, they're called EBEs, extraterrestrial biological entities, right? And we're more than that, right? We're an avatar, you know. That's what we are, you know. Do, 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 do. Uh, Think about the book of Enoch. Okay, yeah, I can tell you about that. So the book of Enoch is basically, how to put it, the first edition of a mystery school's textbook, basically, right? And because it's from way, 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 way back, see the Bible that we read, the King James, let's say, right? Well, that's like that's like a magazine. Boy, the sun's coming out. Anyway, so the Book of Enoch was not written by God per se. No, it was written by the you know dimensional characters who showed up one day on this little mud hole and said, this looks like a good place to have a science fair." So the kids started playing around and creating things. And a good example is you know Star Trek. The guy who Gene Roddenberry, who created that. I mean, he was a smart guy, right? And so he was a military guy, right? He was in again, all these guys who show up like who are linchpins of a situation, who get something rolling, usually are from military intelligence, like the guys. What's his name? One of the two chuckleheads who were the newspaper guys who basically got the credit for unearthing what happened at with Nixon. And one was a guy. Oh, I don't know which one it was, but one of those two chuckleheads was straight out of military intelligence and went straight into the Washington Post and went straight to that story, right? And Deep Throat was Al Haig, and basically Nixon was most of the presidents were a member of a mystery school, right? And so all of what we're going through is started back in the day when the dimensionals showed up, and someone in the Bible they call them Nephilim. You know, the gods came down and went into women and made went into they were like banging them. Go on to go look for Hentel monsters, and you'll get a good idea of who the Nephilim was. And let's see, esoteric. What's his name? Alchemist. Hey, buddy. Good to see you. I can't read S tomes, right? So, been a while. Yeah. If you could, esoteric, put things in capital so I can read them. Yeah. These Dollar Tree glasses aren't strong enough. Anyway, and I'm getting old. I had a little brush with death a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, okay, thank you. And it's no big deal. I've died 7 times. I didn't die this time. I just went off the wagon. I went to the Unmentionables' parents' house for Thanksgiving, and boy, his mom is traditional Italian cook, and she's a baker, and she had every yummy Italian cookie, cake, pastry, and she put them all over the house on little silver trays. So no matter where you sat, you could just. And I said, "Well, I'll just have one." Well, after 4 nights and 3 days, or 4 days and 3 nights, waiting for John. John just up the hill. I kept calling, John, come on down. Let's, your whole family's here. We're having a great time. And his family isn't mean, terrible, never raped him, never beat him, never, they were good American, upper, lower, upper, lower middle class. That's what they were born in. Italian, Irish guy, Italian girl. Their parents got off the boat and put themselves through college in like, the tens and twenties, right? And then got jobs as teachers. And her John's mom, he was he came as a musician and had a jazz band, went to college, became an engineer, taught, and then got a job in engineering. And he was the head engineer of building some of the most iconic buildings in New York City in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. The Seagram's building, the UN building. I mean, that's John's grandfather. Does he talk about, and he's a musician. Does he talk about him at all? And his mother's mother was an artist. She was a painter, sculptor, everything. Noni, right? And she put herself through college, and then started one of the major arms of the art school in New York public schools, right? She was instrumental in thousands of kids becoming artists. This John, yeah, that's Nani. She was old. You know, whatever talent John has as a musician or as an artist is totally, you know, genetically engineered into him, right? And his mother is a pretty good artist too. She went to school to be a teacher, right? So did his dad. He went to school, and so they both teachers in New York. And then they put in their time to get a little bit of their pension, and then they went and stumbled into Roanoke, Virginia, became teachers. His dad, taught at the what do you call it, junior college or whatever they call that, and his mom got a job in the public school there, which in Virginia did not pay much. And Virginia, you want to know everyone thinks Mississippi and Georgia and those terrible southern. Well, Virginia is like Virginia when Brown came down and schools were mandated to be integrated. What did Virginia do? It closed all the public schools in Virginia for 5 years, and then sold all the public schools, all the counties, sold the public schools that they had, that the state and the federal government built for them, to private individuals who had private schools that only white people could go to. And that's how Virginia dealt with Brown, right? And now that that auspices has hit our Supreme Court. Oh, get ready! I mean, this war in Russia is it's the Russians aren't they are just representing a certain element of like, hey kids, this is what the world's going to be, and it's not Vlad's reading a script, and so it's like the war of the two Vlads. The Ukrainian president's named Vlad, and the Russian, it's the two Vlads, right? And who was the nastiest Russian of all? The Vlad the Impaler, right? So that's what they're going for, right? And under Mikhail Gorbachev and Yeltsin's the only guy who ever was democratically voted on, right? And then he handed it over to Putin, and Putin was placed there in '99. And he's never been voted in because he is representing, right, the hidden hand. And he changed, so the First World War changed Russia from the Tsar, right? And then we had the loyal opposition of Stalin, and the Bolsheviks. And then it became, the Kremlin, and that was somewhere in between the Tsar and Joe Stalin. And now, Vlad is the perfect example of a fascist. And what is fascism? And all of this has to go back to ST's question about Anarchy, you know, and that's where we're going. We're going to a digital, um, you know, kind of metaverse that we will just be the ever-ready batteries of an Anarchy. That's the essence of the science experiment that was started a billion years ago, right? And we have been many, many. I mean, people think, oh, we've only been here 6,000 years. I mean, the moron born again Christians say, oh yeah, right, humans have only been here 6,000 years. Really? Oh man. And then then the scholastics, yes, well, we've been here, as this, organized structure, maybe 60,000, maybe 100,000 years. And Darwin was right. It was this just a confluence of accidents that biologically created us, right? And then it was, the war of the superiors, right? And here we are. We are the superior race now. We are the entitled ones. We're special. Well, no, sorry. If George Lucas sat at the feet of Joseph Campbell and listened to him for a year and wrote it all down, and that's Star Wars, right? And all of that empire was our solar system, right? And the planet that got blown up by the Death Star, which is actually our moon is a artificial satellite. Stays in the same. All the other moons around all the other planets that are rocks, they kind of move and turn and kind of move a little bit. This Our moon stays exactly where it is because by it staying there, it does something to our gravitational essence that makes it capable for us to be here. If the moon wasn't there, we couldn't be here, right? And so, like I said, this is somebody's big science fair. And so we've had many, the first intelligent race was reptile here because this was a swamp. So, hey, and to get rid of, okay, we got to sweep these out. So, like all the cockroaches are moving to the deep green, right? And I'm just, I've had 18 years of bliss out there, right? And now the last 2 years, guys like, the mercantile scumbags, um, the heavy water mercantile, basically bought up the whole, what is that, eastern end of our lake, right? Just came in with about $5 million and bought up everything friggin' cheap right around just before, um, like they knew, just like in 2019, they came and bought all the property. And then between 2019 and 2020, all during and 21, during the pandemic, they bulldozed everything and turned that whole corner there into lots for gated communities, right? About something close to 400 or 500 lots, which they sold for about $250,000 a piece, just lots. And on that corner, it's on a road called the Dry Run. Why do they call it the Dry Run? Because there is no water in the ground. You put there, you can't have a well. So they sold about 500 lots to people who can't have any drinking water ever. Sorry, but that wasn't in the contract. And it's on a steep hill. So if your house is up here, your shit is going into this guy's basement, right? And there's no electricity out there. It's all rural electricity, like one line. There's no three phase, right? They got they got pipes for three phase, but they have no wires. There's no power coming from the utility company. So I mean, it's one gigantic money laundering scam, and that's what this planet is. Is one. I mean, it was the Garden of Eden, God's little place, and we never left the garden, you know. And that's the other interesting thing is that when Adam and Eve, first of all, you know, Eve was the numero uno, you know, pretty one, smart one. She came first, you know. God's a guy. Of course, he's going to make a chick. You read the Old Testament, you can't get any more misogynist than that. You know, but that's God, and God is Gob, and Gob is the snake oil salesman, right? And the snake oil salesman convinced Lucifer, the illuminated one, the one character actor of love's co-creation, that first burst into, in the beginning, all things were dark. And then there was Lucifer, right? And who is Lucifer but the twin of Jesus Christ? And so if you really get into the mystery schools and study the the text of the Anunnaki, you will find all of this story. And that's what Joseph Campbell's myth of the hero is all freaking about. And so Joseph Campbell, told George Lucas this story. He was, Lucas's griot, like I'm your griot. And, I've got a good 2,000 of these stories. Kids, I would start putting this stuff on some medium, CD-ROMs, your hard drive. I don't have them. Our brother of our adepts, Dragon, um, basically, he was really kind enough to the first 50 or so of my shows. he put them on thumb drives and sent them to me. And John went, one time I went away, when he threw them away, but I didn't take any of my stuff out of there. I knew he'd beg me to come back. But one time I came back and he had gone through all my stuff. Just like he did a number of YouTubes where he was going through my stuff, right? And he found like all of my documents. Um, he had pictures. I had all these tintypes of my grandparents, like from my great grandparents, not my grandparents, my great great grandparents, that whole side of my mother's side, and my Italian grandfather's side, because he was a hot guy in Rome. John took all of that. He took all the pictures of my wedding certificate to Donna Ann and all the pictures we took. He took all of that. Now he's the only one up there, and I had put them in this closet safely in like little folders in a box, and I went back there, and all of it was gone. John, what'd you do with my stuff? I didn't do it. Get out! Get all of this stuff in this house. It's mine. I bought it. I own everything. I own you. And that's one time when I said, when he was going on and on about how I costed him money, even though I was buying the food to feed him to begin with and cooking it for 2 years until plus he was too scared to go. He couldn't go down the hill and go to Kroger's, right? And his inability to interact with humanity, he goes out there and like one time he wanted to do a video, right? And so we had this plan of like, because I would be doing these videos and we were gonna go like take a walk through Roanoke, right? And so I was just dressed as me, and he went out in his hot pants, underpants, and a spaghetti T-shirt, and so we pull into a parking lot to um, start our film. I get out and I walk towards the door of Kroger's. I look around and John's not with me, but he's in, and this is when he had a gigantic truck, one of those trucks that's like monster truck. It takes a ladder to get into the truck. The tires are like 6 foot high. I mean, he had one of those, and he destroyed it because he would fly down our riverbed of a driveway at about 30, 40 miles an hour. So bam, boom, bing, bang, smash, crash. And I'm sure, if you watch his things, when he had that truck, and he's destroyed 3 cars that way, right? Because when you go down that, the motor is running, the crankshaft is doing this, and it's spinning like 2,800 RPMs, doing all kinds of crazy things in that motor. And when it's doing smashing into things, and it's not designed to do that, the crankshaft he broke 3 or 4 motors that way. Anyway, so he I look around and I see you can't miss the truck. It's like 8 feet above every car. So he's driving around the parking lot following this attractive woman, right? And it's like, and I basically hobble because this is when I was in not the best shape. I got canes and I hobble over there. If you ever see the video on the Mentionable Ones channel of me, we had a big snowstorm. Is John, does he get out? I'm like huffing the wood to the fireplaces and keeping the house warm. And he's got like 1,800 electric heaters up there, so it's like the Caribbean in his apartment. But you got those wood stoves going, and he wouldn't let me up there to start the wood stove in his apartment, you know. And once in a while it would, but he made me carry the wood up the stairs with canes, right, and up the steps, and I wanted to make a pile. I used to have a pile inside there next to the wood stove. It was very convenient, just do this, right? Anyway, he no, right? So I made a pile outside the door, and then but every time it snowed, I get out with a broom and broom the snow out was like dust, right? So, once it stopped, I could then clear it away. So anyway, there's a video of me. It had snowed, I had swept it, and then it snowed, and then it rained, and then snowed, and then rained, and so it kind of turned the whole driveway in front of the house that much ice, right? So I had a little bag of salt that I had kept for an emergency, and I basically um, salted off the steps, and then cleared the steps, and then cleared a like circle in front of the steps down into the main floor of the school, the ground level. About a 10-foot circle, right? And then from there, I chipped away, and the sun kind of came out, and I kind of chipped away these little lines. So the sun would hit that and start melting the ice, and then those little strips that I had made, the water would go, and I had it draining down the hill. And then once the water got underneath the ice, I could then easily. I had a crowbar, big, like a railroad crowbar, and I just kind of clink, clink, clink. And John came out in his shorts and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Stop it!" I said, "No, John. If we're ever getting out of here, you got to clear this road. "Yeah, it's too cold." And so, and then he came back, with his the mink coat that he stole from the Russian lady, and still in his golden underpants, and his spaghetti T-shirt, and and it's really amazing. It's So I weighed 460 pounds, right? I lost 240 pounds in about 5 years. And how did I do that? I changed my diet, right? Living, working for the desperate corporate lawyers, I lived like they did, super duper unbelievable meals, 3 of them a day for 10, 12 years, that can pack it on, especially if you're not doing that, right? I work 18 hours on this house. Okay, give me a break, you know. And he had other people work on the school. He didn't do everything himself. I mean, John is amazing. Um, the school, I had it for a good 12 years. I bought it in '03, sold it to John in 2015. So that's what, 12 years? Yep. And that was more my warehouse and sanctuary and school. It was my school. I had a mystery school there, right? But my students were so, oh, I want you to, here's $300. Just give me a certificate says that I'm a shaman. I said, no, no, it's not how it works. And I did it for 3 summers, and I probably had 30 people up there. And I had a big school. Oh, no, we can live. I said, no, 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 you're not living in the school. You're living up on the hill. That's the sanctuary. That's where the Cherokee's most sacred place. That's where there is a cave. That's it's opening the cave is about that big. Maybe if you had a small head, you could stick your head in. Then it spreads out. It is the cave that Yoda brought Luke to when he went to Tatooine, right? It's that cave. It's a cave of your id, right? It's where you face the fears of your subconscious, right? So there's this altar that that is Cherokee put where 5 to 15 people could sit on a flat thing. Otherwise, it's like woo, right? So right in front of that hole, right? You sit, you meditate, you chant, you drum, and if you get the right frequency, you're inside that cave. And that's John's. He's never done that. I showed him how to do it. you know, and spirits, that's a dimensional doorway. They're all over the place, right? It's one reason I bought the place. And I could have bought it for nothing, the county, and the county still says that property up there is worthless, right? Because they look at the school, and George built an art piece, not a thing that's that the county went up there with the inspectors, and so you know That's one reason why, John's never selling that thing for 700 grand unless he finds someone like him who has $700,000, right? Because um, I bumped into Inga, and I knew her. I worked at a foundry in New York, Joe Battle Foundry, and when Inga and George came, Inga had these statuaries that she wanted cast, and no one around Rona could do that, not at least up to the level that she wanted. So, she asked the art people she knew in New York because they had lived in New York for a year or so, and they basically George wanted, George is like Colonel Sanders. He wanted his little cul-de-sac. He didn't want to be around people. People didn't like him. He didn't like them. Inga liked everybody. She could get along with everybody. She's a lot like she's an Aquarius. She was like me. We were, anyway. So that's when I first met them because my gig in the foundry, we were an industrial foundry, but we did art restoration, right? And we did castings, right? And there were some guys who were really great casters, but they were like industrial casters. So they taught me the skill set because I was always, my whole thing. If there's anything that I really enjoy, it's learning about something. It's doing my best at how I have a lot of skill sets. So you're you know you can do something, but you're not a master of anything. Well, that's not true because I learned very young from Grandpa Stoll that you do your best in everything you do, so you can be a master at everything you do. He was a master at everything. So this guy showed me how. So I couldn't, they were doing gigantic industrial castings. Not, I wanted to do a little statuary thing. So bingo, she comes to our place. We have all the hardware, all the technology, everything to do anything in metal. And you know, so I did she had a reverse wax for it. We made a mold. We did the cast. Bingo, bango. So she spent about 2 months there, and I kind of they knew some people. I knew some people. So we had she and I, and George too. George was kind of fun when he was fun. But that was maybe 3% of the time with the general public. Um, the rest, he was just a dog. So anyway, I mean, he was always sniffing around skirts all the time, and that was the '70s. Inga still was an attractive. I mean, I had a girlfriend who was 89 years old, so I wasn't like, um, you know, I liked older women, you know, but she just liked being Inga. You should read her book, right? And really tells her story from birth to death almost. And she really goes in great detail about the World War II years. And so, anyway, when I came to Roanoke, I went to this one little town called Bedford first, and I went to Lynchburg. I was there about 2 years, had a big building downtown. I had a couple buildings in Bedford. I'd rent them out. I was doing pretty good as a landlord. But there was no fun in those places. I mean, they're both very uptight, old white money, that kind of stuff. Very, very Colonel Sanders, right? Bedford was ridiculous because the best restaurant they had was Hardee's, right? And and so I and Roanoke it's a very interesting town, right? And so I went there. I met some artist people, right? I started. I met this one guy. Oh, I had how I got there. I was working for the BBI, Bureau of Behavioral Investigation, which is a unknown but top of the notch that goes and looks at things that go bump in the night. They're like the hired gun X Files guys, and I bumped into them um, in Ash Pit because Ash Pit is a real bump in the night kind of place. There are a lot of portals here. Anyway, so um, there is this thing called the Devil's Highway that goes from Asheville up 26 to 81, hang a left, and goes all the way to Stanton, right? And up in Stanton, up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, this artist guy, I forget his name, but in the late 60s, I stumbled into it. It's called Swan and Noah. You know, if you were to say art collective, Swan and Noah, and the guy who ran it, he and his wife was this like Norma, just a beautiful, like movie star kind of heiress lady. And he was this European guy who was amazing. And he was a Rudolf Steiner type of character. So he had been in Europe around the mystery schools, but he did physics. He did these drawings. One day I'll dig up sacred book I have. And 1790s and the 1930s, the mystery schools were out and about. And there were a lot of people like me who bumped into them, got schooled there, and did their thing. And so this guy, I bumped into him, and he was a polyglot. He was brilliant. He knew 10 languages. He was a great painter, sculptor, and he was famous at his painting and sculpture, right? But he didn't stick to it, so he didn't make. I mean, he made enough. Whenever he needed some money, he did it, right? But he was interested in the mystery schools and all of the above. So I stumbled into their place, and I spent a whole summer there. And he built this castle for his wife, and it had this amazing marbles. Everything was marble and stained glass windows. He made everything, and not like George. He got everything. But this guy, everything. George, everything was good shot, and that's why John had to have to work on this. John I had, I left. I am a good enough plumber, no, not to want to do it. So I got everything that, as long as it was above freezing, November. I wanted, and it had really good water in that hill, so I doused the spot. I spray painted it. I got a guy who's a well guy, right? And he came up in his little pickup truck, and he said, "Okay, sure, I can put a well in here. It's $75 a foot, and that includes, drilling it, casing, the well motor, and the pipe going from the wellhead into the place, the pressure thing, and the wiring, and $75 a foot, and you'll have water coming out." Sounds good to me. This is what I want you to do. No, you don't want to put it here. This is where you're going to have your parking lot, because the driveway came around, and then it kind of came down to this other thing where Dumpington was. And so I said, no. I doused it. Dowsing, oh, that's a fake. That's a fake. No one can find, what did you use? You use a stick? I said, no, I have my copper rods. And, I got them. I showed him. I walked around, and right where the spray painted X was, the rods kind of, right there. He goes, oh, you just moved your hands. I said, no. I mean, what matter? You're going to get $75 a foot, right? And he goes, yes. And I said, this top of the mountain, I've already looked it up. The average well depth is about 1,000 foot. If you're lucky, maybe 600 foot, right? So that's what, $75. All right, but so you're the right. So if you dig this, how deep you going? He goes, I don't know. You're right, somewhere between 800 and 2,500 feet. I said, okay, so $75 a foot. I'm ready, but this is where I want you to do it. If you can't see yourself to doing it, then I'll go find another guy. He says, no, no, I'll do it. If you want it there, yeah, but it'll be a dry hole, and then but you'll still have to. However far I go till I say hey, it's a dry hole, you're gonna have to pay me that and whatever else. I had to dig 5 other holes. It's still $75 a foot for how times whatever. I said no problem. Right? You want to make a contract? Let's do it here. So I had my electric. I had my little book that's like you buy it at a Staples that have contracts, and we wrote it out right, very specifically. 75 cents, $75 a foot, and everything else included, right? And I'm going to pay you an extra. What's the best well motor you can get? Well, for an extra, you get a lifetime guarantee. The company will come out, pull it out, put a new one. $300. Okay. So I'll be up next week. Okay, no problem. So he brings like a oil well rig. I mean, I mean, the way he got it up our was amazing. It was like a military endeavor, right? He just brought this gigantic thing, and it was all like he really didn't need anybody. He had all the pipe casings lined up, and basically, you know, the derrick was hydraulic. He didn't have to do anything. He pushed a button. This robot arm grabbed one of those pipes, pulled it up top of the derrick, slid it down, and then put the drill thing in it. Went into the ground, and then it kind of dragged that casing down, and then it drilled and dragged the casing down. And he did that. And then he got into stone. He goes, "Well, we don't need to put casing anymore, because that's you got about 100 foot of casing." I said, "And that's still not 100 feet." He said, "You have about 20 feet of casing. That's all you need, because we're going through stone now, and so you'll this will be your casing." I said, "Fine, good to me. Good to know." So, but it was all auto. He just the machine just kept putting more and more lengths of drill pipe, and went down and down. He went down 30 feet. Right? So that's every 10 feet was $750. He went down 3 times that. It was like I paid him 3 grand, and and then he tried to cheapen things up. But in the contract, it said that he doesn't get that he doesn't get paid until there's water coming out of the faucet, right? And so he dug the hole, and he used crappy hose, right, and crappy wire. And I saw it. I said, "Why aren't you using?" I knew what he said. Well, we didn't stipulate. I said, "But if that breaks, I don't want you to fill the hole right up because." I said, "Well, no, I'm filling the hole up." I said, "Well, it's it's got to have the water coming out the faucet, right?" And he goes, "That's right." So he fills it up. He puts the expansion tank, and then he connects it to my plumbing system, and he hits the circuit breaker, and you can the lights kind of dim, and then they dim because instead of using you know 10 wire, he used 14, right? Not even 12. And he had, instead of using you know direct burial cable, he used just frigging Romex. Like I wouldn't know. I'm an electrician. I said, "Hey, why?" He said, "Oh, this will work fine." And and he said, "Come on, you lucked out on the depth, and let me." I said, "Okay," but turn the faucet. So the lights dimmed, and then water shot out of the ground, right? And this is a piece, and like in the middle of where you know, not where it was connected to that end or that end, but somewhere in between. And so no water came out the faucet, but it was shooting out of the ground, right? And then circuit breaker snapped, dead short, right? So he basically had to dig that whole thing up again, right? And first he just dug where the water shot out of the ground, but it wasn't there. The break was somewhere else, and it just kind of shot out there, right? And so he had to, and the wire was like burnt up, so he had to dig that back up, and then it caused a dead short in that, and he didn't put in. I paid him extra $300 for the best thing, and when he pulled it out, I said, "So you put the real one?" "Oh yeah." I said, "Let me see the receipt." "Oh no, no, it's so good." Pulled it out. He put a used pump in there, and so he wasn't going to get his. I said, "Listen, I'm going to pay you 4 grand. Put in what we signed up for. Put in, you know, the well, um, you know, direct burial um, water pipe that is inch big as it's written in the contract. You put a half-inch thing. That's why that thing burned out down there." And and so because the hill is so amazingly dialectrically spiritual that this guy was just trying to cheat, lie, and steal. And the hill said, Not to my buddy Sensei Al Bob." And so he dug that up. He did everything right. He connected it all up. We hit the circuit breaker. It was perfect. Still works today, right? And so I gave him 4 grand, right? And he drove away. And as he was going down the hill, he when he came to take his derrick down, he was he was prone to drink a bit, and so he had drunk a little bit more than a bit. And so when he was driving that sucker down, soon as he hit the blacktop, I mean, he kind of I was watching him go down, and he was not taking me. I would go like 3 inches a second. I was like, but he was like wanting to get the frick out of there, do another job, and he basically bounced down the riverbed. As soon as he got on the paved road, which is still pretty steep, he gunned it. Now he didn't realize that his bouncing around ruptured his brake line, right? Because even though he was going fast, it was still in low gear. Once he hit that blacktop, he took it out of low gear and put it into drive, and just started going. And he took that sucker right off a cliff, and he was thrown out of the vehicle. And he broke a leg and a few fingers on his working hand, and gouged out an eye. But he didn't die. I went to the hospital, kind of. But that was it. His way of making money doing with his robot well drilling thing, that was gone. No insurance, that was not coming back. And I heard later on that he just kind of drunk himself to death. And that's what the hill does. If you are of good heart, good spirit, if you are serving love's co-creation, man, it takes care of it. Otherwise, it's confused. It doesn't understand. So that's why George was, always in a tussle for the 20 years that he was there. And Inga was fine. It was. I met Inga, and she was living very happy in her little house, but she didn't have any money. Her son, who had moved back to Germany, and he had no real degrees, but he was pretending he was a psychoanalysis because, he's a smart guy. So he was feigning that and then doing well enough, but he wasn't really taking care of mom. He's in Germany. And her daughter married a guy who she browbeated into, building her a big, beautiful house, and she was living the better homes and gardens. And she would come and see her mom every night, but she'd get drunk every time. And they weren't quite taking. I mean, her husband really loved Inga, so he did take care of her. He wasn't a rich guy, right? And so Inga just lived comfortably, and she had these little, like the school and about 5 other little places they built that they had made their money. You know, George tried to be a famous artist, didn't do it. Right? Inga could have been. She just liked making art, right? And so she, he died, and she was happy. Her friends would come up. I would always bring her food. I always sit with her. I take her downtown. She had her little car, and she was good at driving it. But she more and more and more just liked and she had the song. She made art. She read books. she talked to me and her friends. A few of her friends would visit her, but I would take her visit her old friends who were these old ladies, and we had just loads of fun. So that was 2 years of that. Then at one point she said, why don't you move up here? There's the A-frame. You can go stay in the A-frame. That was the bathtub that John was in the other day. That's in the A-frame. And she goes, it's a mess. It might take you a few months to clean it out. Well, I went and got, I had some money. I went and got myself a U-Haul truck, a van, threw everything into the dump, pushed it out and brought it out. It took me a week to clean all the crap that was in there, and then ripped all the shitty everything that was in it, just down to the bare bones. And then I kind of figured the water to work, the toilet to work, hot water to work, electricity to work. It was very comfy. And the girl was cool. Who drove the thing. And she had gotten locked up with this guy, and they weren't married, and they had a kid, and they're screaming all the time. And I'm only like 25 feet away where they're living. Right? They would just throw the garbage out, down the stairs. It didn't even take it out down to the road with the garbage pail. And I would pick it up. I got a big garbage pail from down there, and I would bring it up. And I would just throw it back to the truck, bring it up, and pick up all the garbage they threw out all over the place. And up in the was where my dog found the sacred Cherokee everything, and so I started clearing that out and bringing it back to what it was. I'm an anthropologist. I know how to respectfully clear a space. And then I found the dimensional door of the tunnel gate. So I was having a good time. I was happy, and she said, "You can live up there a year if you clean the thing out, right?" So I had cleaned it up, fixed it up, made it pretty like within a month. She came up there and she said, "Tricky monkey." I said, "It's okay. You need some money." I said, "No." She goes, "No. You did a great job." And then we took a walk. I didn't even know this was here. I've been here 20 years. I didn't even know this was 30 years. I didn't even know it was here. And I showed it to her. That was a Cherokee sacred site. And I had chairs that you could sit if you didn't want to sit on the ground. And so, we sat there and went into state and felt the energy and saw the spirits. And she was, "Oh, wow, that's why I feel so good here. Look at that guy. I like him." So, so we brought her back down. And then, and as winter came, I went down to Florida, my place in Florida. And that was '03. And then I got a gig doing a demographic gig for this entity that was creating an educational system for America. Like America's education system is based on counties, right? Not even states. And whereas most countries have a nationalized education, that's why pretty much everyone in Europe and Western Europe is educated pretty good. Pretty much everyone who was educated in Russia and the Soviet Union were educated pretty good. If you're rich, you can kind of maybe get an education. Even that, not so much. Unless you're special. So I was doing that between Boone and in North Carolina. North Carolina and Tennessee, because demographically those two states really resonate with all of America, right? And parts of Virginia too. I started to encompass Rona, but that's the demographic microcosm of America, and that's when I realized that when I was doing this study. It had already been, I mean, the protocols and everything had already been set. Everything had already been running and collecting data for about 10 years. And they hired me to go to all of these different schools where they were testing out their protocols and develop a a vehicle that could take that data and put it into a PowerPoint that then could be used to bring forth to the federal government and anybody else who wanted to buy this system, right? So that was my gig, and so I was good at. I was good at dealing with the scientificology part of it and the human part of it, right? The people part, right? And then I'm a very good statistician and strategistician, and so I've been statistics based strategy, right? So that's what I was hired. And they gave me a really nice car, gave me a credit card, so whatever hotel or meal or anything, yeah, and gave me also a cash per diem above that. And paid me, you know, 5 grand to, well, it changed over 2 years. Started around 5 grand, went up to about 15 grand a month. And once I finished it and gave the spiel, or I got the people who were going to give the spiel, up to snuff. So we anyway, so that's how I got into Tennessee and that neck of the woods. I had camped there a lot. I had known it. I'd gone to Banner Elk and uh, Old Man Mountain and Boone and all those kind of places in the '60s, right? Because I was at Duke. I would just hitchhike up to the Blue Ridge Parkway once I realized it was up there, and just hiked all over the place and found these little towns and would hang out and go to whatever they had close to a bar or a restaurant and hang out and read tarot cards and palms and I'd have my tools and I'd always run it afterwards somebody, oh, you're an electrician here, come and help me. So I did that for a number of years, and then there were a lot of people growing bud and doing shine, and I would help them out too. And so that was my in the 68, 69, 70 was my midway. Was it 66, maybe 67 to 70 was my time of bumming around there, and I was still in New York and still doing all kinds of stuff. And it was a great place to hide away from my draft board, right? So anyway, so I so I've known this neck of the woods for a long time. So I've seen it go from old time, what it was 100 years ago, because that's what it was. That's what it was like Little Switzerland and Michaelville and other some other a whole bunch. But the mob came up here in the '80s, bought up everything for $20 million and turned it into their little version of mountain. Everything but gambling, right? So it's a place where people can come and buy their getaway home. That's they were laundering money, and they took dirty money, bought up everything, built all these crappy little houses that looked good, and but and so so that's so my little neck of the woods was an area a bit too far, a bridge too far, a mountain too far. I'm right in the there's only two roads, one county road, the rest are park roads, right? So nothing to shake. It's a lot of snow, a lot of ice, a lot of this, a lot of that. So it really, I've worked free, camped around it since let's say '67. Sensei, there is feedback from your mic. Maybe my hand. How about now? And kids, my whole everything that I have, my laptop, my phone, anything, it's like everything, Mr. Globaloni is watching this, Uh, Let's see. How about if I do this? I'm not gonna touch. I'm just gonna put it on a table. Is that better? Is it better? Is it better? Clear. Okay. So okay. Hands free. And that's it. I don't know what I'm doing. Like I said, don't believe a word I say. I'm just agreeing, telling you a story. So when I bought the school um, from Inga, I was doing gigs like that. So I was making pretty good money. Not the corporate money I made in about 8 years later, but I'm doing a lot. I'm still doing electric work. I was doing the demographic work. I was still doing my itinerant scholarly. I mean, different people who had known me from my scholarly days in universities still called me up and said, "Hey, I got something for you to look at," right? And and that's how I got to Roanoke because these guys at the BBI, and I think they call it something else, but it was a real mystery school entity, right? And the Bureau of Behavioral Investigation, and a lot of those guys had come from the Tavistock Institute over there in Europe and the CFR. So anyway, so I had a few clientele, but it was scholarly work, right? So and I still had other things. I still was when I was actual, I was still playing around with being Mr. Shrinky Man, and because I was doing a couple studies for Duke, and that got me into Shrinky Land. First I started. Duke has a great department of, and that's kind of where I bumped into the BBI, and also the SEAL Corporation, and those guys. They're the guys who were doing transhumanism. They were doing transhumanism in '68 when I was at Duke, right? And they were trying to they were doing what Stan Lee uh, did in the comic book with Captain America. They were making super soldiers, right? And so I had been at in New York City in the mystery schools, and I had been a good part of a Theosophical Society, and I had a girlfriend who was big time. She had been, oh, sweetie slash niece slash member of the family of Madame Blavatsky's crew, right? So she brought me up there to their place upstate New York that's called Pumpkin Hollow. Really great retreat, beautiful, beautiful, amazing place, and and it was kind of falling apart. So she got me up there, and their electrics was just barely in existence, and people were getting shocked all the time. So it's hard to be meditative when, So and I bet you that scratchiness is my electromagnetic field just holding on to the thing because I know there's just these two little freckles on the side of my laptop that are my mic, and I know not to hold it there, but my just touching it can. Anyway, so they got to like me. I had already kind of had some experience, my own experience. Um, Billy Kluver at the CFR, his cousin, Madame Olga Kluver, who was she was a character in the Star Wars movie uh, where we get to meet the girl Jedi, right? She's on Tatooine, waiting in the sand for mommy and daddy to come back, and then she gets taken off planet. But I'll come. I have to get back, right? But she's bouncing around, and she meets Han, and they go to this nice like Caribbean place for criminals, and there's this old ancient First Peoples little town where this little midget lady with big glasses. Well, that was Madame Olga Kluber on Lexington Avenue. She had a curiosity shop. Now, if you ever hear that, go read whatever book that the Curiosity Shop because it's always about dimensional portals. Now they may, the guys who wrote about it in the 19th century and the 18th century, they used their language to cover it up. But those guys who like Mary Shelley and oh, the guy who wrote about 10 Leagues Under the Sea and those guys. They knew what was going on. They were part of secret, secret societies and but mystery schools. Secret societies is like the Illuminati. They're a business, right? Mystery school is a whole nother thing. It's like an ology, right? It's a study of the spirit of creation and how to be a servant of it. I mean, that's really what mystery is. You are there to be a servant to love's co-creation. That's what they all of them. And so there are light mystery schools and dark mystery schools. But as in the yin yang, you need both, right? So clear better. I bet as I get closer to it, gets worse, right? Like I said, I have a pretty interesting, as a lot of people have commented, you have a presence. Some people, you make me feel so anxious. I mean, I can just sit in a room and make people anxious. Other people start giggling, and other people just kind of come over and sit in my lap and start to kiss me. So it's how I affect people, right? All dogs love me, even the vicious ones. These guys, when I lived in Albuquerque and the gangsters had these really nasty dogs. And, you know, I would, they would, make money gambling on fighting dogs, right? And it wasn't who's going to win. They would go steal dogs from the rich people and throw them in a pit and then put one of their killer dogs in there. And people would bet on how long it would take for the killer dog to kill Fluffy, right? And I would go in there and, because they just leave the bodies in there, I would go down there. And because the smart dogs, because those killer dogs were trained, as soon as the dog, like, played dead, it would stop, right? If the dog was up on fours or twos or, it would still try to tear it apart. But if it fell over and pretended it was dead, and the smart dogs would do that. So I would jump down there. They'd still be, messed up, but I would pick them up. And so one time, one of these gangster guys, "What are you doing down there? It's my hole." I said, "No, it's not a hole. It's a garbage dump. This is where people throw bodies." "So get out of there. What are you doing?" I said, "This dog's alive." "No, it isn't. My dog killed it." I said, "No, it isn't." And the dog's right there. And it goes, "Arr, arr, arr." And I looked up at the dog and I said, "Honey bunny, what's up?" And the dog went, "Oh, yes. Yes, you're a good dog." And I just got closer and closer to it. And the thing about dogs is you don't put your face right where it can bite it, right? And the other thing is you never give a dog an open hand, that you don't know. You cover but you give the hand so it can smell it. If it can, they dogs know everything by its smell. So, and I wouldn't put my hand close enough where it could bite me, but close, 2 feet away. Boy, he's got X-ray vision on smell on who I am. And if the guy's got him on a chain, and the dog can't get at me, but as soon as "Oh, honey bunny," the dog's like, "Ooh," and kind of sits and is looking at me, and then I come slowly up towards him, and "You good girl, you good girl, good girl, good boy, good boy, good boy. Yes, you're good doggy, good doggy." And within 5 minutes, the dog's rolled over on rubbing uh, its tummy and rubbing its ear and rubbing its cheek, and then I always have a little bicky in my pocket. "Here for you, just for you." And the dog, "Rum, rum, 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 rum." And then the gangster, "Oh, what are you doing?" Right? And we'd start to drag and dog get up, and so that's what happened this time. I got out of the hole and I was, "Oh, good dog, good dog." The dog just kind of sat. And I got and smelled. Then it kind of rolled over, and I was rubbing his side. And then he was on all fours. I was rubbing his tummy, and his eyes were closed, and his tongue was hanging out. And the guy goes, "Larry, come here!" And it pulled the dog, and the dog just got up, ate the shit out of that guy. I mean, tore him up because the guy didn't have the leverage or the position or the control over the dog. The dog now just went right at him, and the first thing that dog was ripped his balls off, just bit him in his balls, right? And then threw him in the pit and jumped down at the pit and went at him. And I tell you, I walked over to where Doc was, who had the guy who brought me there, who had the general store, and got myself a drink and a little favela, and came back. And that dog had chewed the shit out of that guy. And I brought about 5 favelas, right? I ate 2, came back, and the gangster was like, I don't know, he was bloody. I mean, he still had his parts to him, but um, he was messed up. And I go, yo, come here, buddy. And that's what I called him, buddy, not Larry. Come here, buddy. He came up. I said, you're a good dog, aren't you? Yes, you are. I'm gonna bring you to your new friend. I'm your boy, but I'm gonna bring you to your new friend. I talked him over to Doc. I said, Doc, you need a dog in this store, and this is Buddy, right? And I took his collar off. He had one of these collars that choked him, and I took that off, right? And I just brushed him and brushed him and brushed him until all the crap and everything, because this guy didn't take care of him, right? And I went and got some vegetables and I made a stew and I gave him a stew. And he said, love you guys. I just love you guys. And Doc got down there on the ground with him, right? And just started rolling around with him and was a dog too, right? So I'm a dog boy, right? So I can be a cat boy, but cats, I can get along with cats. I can get along with them, right? I'm not a per se cat person. So anyway, um, almost 2 hours. This is a pretty good long one. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. What time is it? How much juice is left here? Oh, I'm almost out. I gotta go. So because it's not good when I just let this thing crash. So okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna come back in the afternoon. So come on back. Come on back. Here y'all. Come on back. And have some questions and I'll talk more instead of the stream of consciousness thing. But this was fun. I liked it. I love you guys. Put some money in the PayPal. Make some comments down below. Love you guys.